What he did was he came out with a very aggressive agenda against immigration, saying that if he won, he will use a 19th century law to use the military to force out illegal immigrants, that he will try to persuade even legal immigrants to go back to his country, that he will try to stop chain immigration, which is if you're living in America and you're legal citizens, then you can bring your children and ultimately your brothers and sisters to this country as well. So he said he will also try to end that. Well, yes, as you said, only 6 days to US elections, and obviously everybody wants to know who is winning. The simple answer is nobody knows. The race is too close to call. There are, like today, about 7 opinion surveys were released. 3 of them showed Donald Trump having an edge over Kamala Harris. 2 showed Harris having an edge over Trump, while 2 were even. So 2 for Harris, 2 even. That obviously means that nobody knows who is going to win. One thing can be said that, say, about 10 days ago, Harris seemed to have a clear edge over Trump. It seemed as if she was moving ahead of him slowly but surely. But in the last 10 days, Trump has overcome some of the hurdles that he was facing. He has successfully projected himself as physically fit. So that was a big question that was raised by the Harris campaign, that yes, our candidate, that is President Joe Biden, was pushed aside because he was not physically because people thought that he was not physically or mentally fit to run the presidency for the next 4 years. But now the same thing could be said about Donald Trump, because he also makes a lot of mistakes. He also, while speaking, he also looks weak, emaciated. He also is not mentally as fit as a person should be to be the president. And it seemed as if the voters would buy this narrative, at least the independent voters who will matter most in this election. Independent voters had started having doubts about Trump's health and his fitness. But Trump realized this, and instead of actually trying to portray himself as mentally and physically, or instead of responding to the charges laid by his opponents, he moved to a direction that he always knew is going to favor him, and that is that of immigration and immigrants living in the United States. What he did was he came out with a very aggressive agenda against immigration, saying that if he won, he will use a 19th century law to use the military to force out illegal immigrants, that he will try to persuade even legal immigrants to go back to his country, that he will try to stop chain immigration, which is if you're living in America and you're legal citizens, then you can bring your children and ultimately your brothers and sisters to this country as well. So he said he will also try to end that, and that he will, in certain cases, he will increase punishment for an immigrant if he breaks law in the United States, and that in most cases, such immigrants who say cause a major traffic accident or who are caught with certain amount of drugs, instead of actually arresting them and putting them in jails, they would be simply deported, sent back to the countries they came from. So all sorts of things were said, and that registered with his voter and increased his popularity. But we still have 6 days to go, and this is a double-edged sword, this immigrant thing. It right now it is favoring him. There are also a lot of immigrant voters in this country, those who are US citizens, those who participate in elections, and this has alarmed them, and there are many who were thinking of voting for Trump within the immigrant community, and it seems that now, if you go ahead with this kind of narrative, that you may end up annoying them as well. So Trump could benefit from him, but it could also hurt him in certain quarters. Also, there are like 6 or 7 states that are considered crucial in this election. That includes Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and in 2 of these states that apparently were slipping out of Harris's camp. The Harris campaign had successfully overcome some of the problems they were facing there, and the latest polls from these 2 states show that Harris now has an edge over Trump in Michigan and Wisconsin. But in North Carolina, today's survey showed Trump having a clear edge. He also has an edge over Harris in Pennsylvania. So I think it is still not possible to say with some clarity that who is going to win. It is still too close to call this race.